She didn't plan on falling in love again at 68. Helen Carter just wanted company for her morning walks and a voice to ask how she slept. Then Christopher Hale showed up with flowers, soft laughter, and the kind of attention that makes a widow feel seen. Neighbors called it sweet. Her kids called it too fast. Tonight, we follow Helen's last year. The dinners, the quiet changes, the papers she signed because she trusted a gentle smile. And the trip that was supposed to be a honeymoon. Stay with me, because out on calm water, under a peach-colored sky, something happened that no one on land could explain, until a piece of ocean footage surfaced. What it revealed will change how you think about love, loyalty, and the danger of being lonely. Helen Carter never minded silence. Not when she was young and living in a tiny apartment with her husband Michael. Not when her children were small and napping after long summer mornings at the park. Not even when the school hallways finally settled after the last bell rang. Silence used to feel like peace, a reward, a soft place to land. But somewhere along the way, silence started feeling different. Heavier, like it had something to say. Helen was 68 now, retired from teaching music to bright and curious children who always called her Miss Carter even after they were grown. She loved those kids. She loved the way their shy voices turned bold when they learned the right note could change everything. She believed music made life easier to carry. It certainly helped her through her own storms. She lived in a small blue house just outside Charleston. The house Michael picked 30 years ago because he said the porch got the perfect morning light. He was right. Every sunrise still painted the railing gold. Every sunrise still reminded her he was gone. Michael passed 3 years before. A heart attack no one saw coming. One moment, he was laughing while grilling chicken in the backyard. The next, Helen was gripping his hand in an ambulance, whispering it would be all right even though she already knew it would never be the same again. Grief does strange things to time. The days after the funeral moved like wet sand. Slow, heavy, exhausting. She remembered setting 2 plates at the table out of habit and standing there staring, wondering how someone could disappear so completely while their presence still lived in every corner. Her children tried to fill the space life had torn open. Samantha, her oldest, called every morning before work. Luke drove over every weekend with groceries he insisted she needed. They meant well. They worried. But loneliness is quiet. It does not always show itself when others are watching. Helen kept herself busy, volunteered at the library, worked part-time directing a church choir, watered her garden the way Michael used to, always talking to the flowers like they were old friends. Some nights, though, she sat at the kitchen table long after dinner, staring at the steam rising from her tea until it faded into the air. The quiet asked questions she did not want to answer. Am I living, or just going through the motions? Do I still have time for joy? Is love something that only happens once? She did not say those thoughts out loud, but they lived in her chest like a tiny ache that never fully faded. Neighbors often told her she looked wonderful, so strong, so graceful, but they did not see the evenings when she stood at the porch railing, wishing someone was beside her to say, "Look at that sky," or "Did you notice the breeze smells like jasmine tonight?" She missed being chosen. She missed being touched. She missed the simple comfort of another presence breathing in the same room. Helen kept a picture of her wedding day on the living room shelf. She was 24 with flowers in her hair. Michael was handsome and nervous, holding her hand like he was afraid he might float away if he let go. She would run her fingers along the frame sometimes and smile through tears that surprised her every time they fell. People like to tell widows to be grateful for what they had, as if love is a memory box you should close once the story ends. Helen knew better. Love is not something you finish. It is something that keeps growing even when the person you shared it with is gone. Still, she wondered if she was being selfish, hoping for another chapter. Was it wrong to want someone to ask how her day was? Someone to laugh with during corny movies? Someone to hold her hand when memories felt too loud? One evening, while folding laundry on the couch, Helen paused and looked at the empty cushion beside her. She pictured Michael sitting there, telling her the socks did not need to be matched perfectly. She let out a soft laugh, then a soft sigh. She whispered into the quiet, "What now?" And the house, the garden, the sky outside her window all stayed silent. Yet somewhere deep in her heart, a small voice answered, "Maybe life still has a surprise for you. Maybe love is not finished with you yet." She did not know it then. She did not know that soon someone would walk into her world with a smile that felt like sunlight and attention that felt like healing. She did not know that loneliness can make hope feel like destiny. Helen only knew one thing on that quiet night. She still had a heart that wanted to feel alive. Helen met him on a Saturday evening in early spring. The kind of night when the air smells like fresh beginnings and the sky holds onto daylight a little longer, as if it knows someone needs the extra light. She almost did not go to the community gala. Crowded rooms had become uncomfortable since Michael passed. Too many polite smiles. Too many people asking how she had been healing. Healing felt like a job she was never fully qualified for. But her neighbor Marlene knocked on the door with a determined grin and said, "Come on, Helen." A little music never hurt anyone. So Helen slipped on a navy dress she had not worn in years and told herself she would stay only an hour. The ballroom was warm with soft jazz. Glasses clinked. People laughed, the kind of laughter that comes from feeling like you belong. Helen smiled, but her heart stayed careful. She stood near the refreshment table, sipping lemonade, planning her escape before anyone could notice she was gone. That is when she heard a voice behind her. "You must be the most interesting person in this room." She turned. A man stood there with a smile that looked perfectly polished, like something he practiced in a mirror. Dark hair, bright eyes, a suit that fit too well to be accidental. He extended his hand. "Christopher Hale, and you are." For a moment, Helen forgot to speak. She felt flustered, almost girlish. It surprised her. "Helen, just Helen, just Helen." Christopher shook his head gently. "I do not think there is a just about you." His charm slid into the space around her like warm lighting. Not overwhelming, just enough to make her stand up a little straighter. They talked. About music. About the school she had taught at for decades. About his work as a financial advisor for retirees wanting peace of mind. Peace of mind. Those words felt like they were aimed straight at the tenderest part of her. He asked questions that made her feel interesting. He listened with attention that made her feel valued. Every compliment sounded thoughtful, not forced. She told herself it is only conversation. Nothing more. But she noticed the way some women glanced over. How Christopher never looked away from her. How he made her laugh louder than she had all year. When the band played a slow tune, he held out his arm. "May I?" Helen shook her head gently. "Oh, I never dance anymore." Christopher grinned. "Then tonight we changed that." He took her hand before she could protest and guided her to the dance floor. It felt awkward at first. Her steps unsure. Her heart anxious. But then something softened. She relaxed into the rhythm. She let herself be held. For the first time in a long time, she did not feel left behind by life. When the song ended, Christopher kept her hand a moment longer than necessary. It felt bold. It felt dangerous. It felt wonderful. They exchanged numbers. He insisted on walking her to her car. "You made my whole evening," he said. "Thank you for saying yes to one dance." Helen sat behind the wheel afterward, keys still in her hand, wondering when she last felt butterflies. Maybe never like this. Maybe love shows up differently the second time around. The next morning, her phone buzzed at 8:01. "Good morning, beautiful. Hope you slept well. Coffee on me next time." Helen stared at the message with a small smile. Beautiful. She had not been called that in years. He began calling every day, checking on her, asking what she was having for lunch, sending silly little jokes just to hear her laugh. He brought flowers to her porch. Lilies. He said they reminded him of her. Strong but delicate. He remembered her favorite breakfast pastry without needing to ask twice. He noticed when her shoulder hurt and offered to drive her to physical therapy. He paid attention in ways that felt almost unreal. Love, or something like it, began unfolding in her house again. Her porch light stayed on later. Her dinners had laughter again. Her loneliness started to loosen its grip. Samantha noticed. She narrowed her eyes at the bouquet in the vase. "He seems young, Mom. Are you sure?" Helen waved it off. People fall in love at every age, Sam. Luke was more cautious. He asked questions about Christopher's job, his history, his family. Helen did not have answers to all of them, but she believed there was time to learn. Sons and daughters often see storms before the clouds form. But Helen only saw sunrise. Because after years of grief and waiting and missing someone who would never return, here stood a man offering new warmth. Was it too fast? Probably. Did it feel good? Absolutely. Helen let herself believe that some blessings arrived late. That being chosen again was not only possible, but deserved. She did not know that sometimes danger smiles. Sometimes danger holds your hand. Sometimes danger looks like exactly what you have been praying for. But right then, in her heart, Christopher Hale felt like a blessing. Love does not always arrive with fireworks. Sometimes it shows up in the small things. A cup of coffee waiting on the porch. A hand reaching for yours when the sidewalk dips. A voice saying I was thinking about you today for no reason at all. For Helen Carter, romance returned in gentle waves. Not loud, not rushed, just enough to make her believe life still had sweetness left to give. After that first night at the gala, Christopher made himself familiar in the sweetest ways. Every morning at 7:30, like clockwork, her phone would buzz. Good morning, sunshine. Step outside and breathe. The world needs you today. Helen would smile, set the phone down, and open the front door to feel the air on her face. She had forgotten how morning light could feel like a promise. One Saturday, she found a fresh loaf of cinnamon bread on her doorstep. No note. She did not need one. She knew. Later that afternoon, he called. Thought you could use something warm for breakfast tomorrow. That was how it always started. Casual, thoughtful, perfectly timed to make her feel cared for. He never pushed. He asked to be included. Can I join you for church? Would you like company on your walk? Can I take you to lunch this week? Every yes felt like opening a window in a house that had been closed too long. He learned her routines quickly. He knew she hummed when she cooked. He knew she read old love letters when she felt lonely. He knew her favorite place to sit was the wicker chair on the back porch because she could hear the river from there. He paid attention to details most people forget after hearing. He remembered the name of her first dog. He remembered the lullaby she taught her choir every Christmas. He remembered the way her voice softened when she spoke about her late husband. That mattered to Helen. She wanted her past to be respected, not erased. They started taking long drives to small towns nearby. Stops for ice cream. Antique shops. Little diners where waitresses called everyone Han without asking permission. Christopher always complimented her. Not in the big dramatic ways of young men trying too hard. In the simple moments. That color suits you. You smile like someone who loves deeply. You make every room feel easy. Words like that can settle into lonely places before you realize they have taken root. Sometimes they sat on the pier behind her house and said nothing at all. Just listened to the water. Just existed together. Helen did not need him to be perfect. She only needed him to stay. She felt young again. Not because of the years he did not have, but because he looked at her like she still had a whole life waiting to be lived. He encouraged her to try new things. A pottery class at the community center. A cooking lesson where they made pasta from scratch and laughed at the mess flour made on their shirts. He even bought her a small red journal. Write one hope every day, he said. Just to remind yourself tomorrow is worth looking forward to. It had been a long time since Helen planned for tomorrow. Her children watched with mixed feelings. Samantha said he was charming, but she said it with the caution of someone reading fine print on a contract. Luke asked if she ever Googled him. Helen brushed it off. People deserve privacy, she told him. But late at night, after a date that left her heart glowing, she sometimes found herself staring at the ceiling, wondering why someone so young, so handsome, so confident, was choosing her. Christopher always answered those doubts before she spoke them aloud. I love the way you love others. I love that your heart never closed, even when it had every right to. You make me want to be better. Words like that can feel like destiny. Bit by bit, he slid into her life. He fixed a loose porch board without her asking. He helped her organize bills and mail that stressed her out. He told her she had earned the right to rest. And he wanted to help her do that. It all felt so natural, so caring. Helen began to lean on him. For comfort, for encouragement, for decisions she never used to ask help with. Love can be gentle. Love can be healing. Love can also blur the line between partnership and dependence without anyone noticing until too late. But at that time, all Helen knew was this. She had spent years missing the sound of another laugh in her home. Now that sound echoed through every room. She had spent years tucking memories into boxes. Now someone wanted to make new ones with her. She had spent years questioning if she would ever feel chosen again. Now a man woke up every morning eager to prove she was. Sometimes blessings arrive quietly. Sometimes blessings are exactly what they seem. And sometimes, blessings are just well-disguised beginnings. Change has a way of slipping into life quietly, like a new picture frame on the shelf, like shoes you did not remember leaving by the door, like laughter in a house that once only held echoes. For Helen Carter, the changes started small. Christopher noticed her hands hurt sometimes when she opened jars, so he reorganized her kitchen so everything important was within easy reach. He told her to relax while he cooked dinner. He told her she had given enough in her life. Now it was her turn to be cared for. She liked the sound of that. He insisted on driving her to the grocery store. At first it felt sweet. Then it became a habit. Then it became the only option. When she offered to drive once, he laughed a little too long and said, "No need. I am here now." One afternoon, Christopher brought over folders and a laptop. He set them neatly on her dining table. "Bills stress you out," he said softly. "Let me handle this part." He said it while brushing a stray hair behind her ear. How could she say no to someone who looked at her like that? Pretty soon he knew her banking passwords better than she did. He set up automatic payments. He sorted insurance notices. He removed piles of paper that once felt overwhelming. "You do not need to deal with all this anymore, Helen. You have me now." Those words warmed her and unsettled her all at once. But the warmth was easier to hold on to. So she did. He learned her schedule, the choir rehearsals, the library volunteer shifts, the occasional lunch with friends. Slowly those gatherings started slipping away. Christopher would say, "You always look so tired after choir. You deserve rest." Or, "Why do you need to go to the library when I can take you anywhere you want?" He said it with love, or at least something that felt like love. When Martha from church called, Christopher answered. "Helen is napping. She needs a calm life now." He was polite, warm, convincing. Helen never heard the conversations where the tone shifted at the very end, where his friendly voice cooled just enough to suggest, "Please do not call again." Days that once felt full now centered around him. Breakfast together on the porch, errands handled by his steady hands, nights spent curled under the same blanket watching shows he chose. It felt romantic, until she noticed how little she went anywhere alone anymore. The garden gate that used to swing open freely now stayed closed. He said it was for safety. Strangers, animals, anyone could wander in. He changed the locks too. Modern security, he called it. He set up a camera above the door. "Just to keep you safe, Helen." She believed it. She wanted to believe it. Everyone wants to feel protected. Her children saw the shifts sooner than she did. When Samantha visited, she found her mother's phone turned off, sitting in a drawer. "Mom, you always keep your phone with you." "Oh, Christopher says I am too available. He says it steals my peace." Samantha frowned. "That does not sound like peace, Mom." But Helen defended him. People defend the ones who make them feel wanted. Luke tried too. He noticed the files on the table, the legal envelopes tucked into a stack on the counter. He asked, "Why is he involved in your estate paperwork?" Helen stiffened slightly. "Because he cares. Because he wants to help me. Because he is here." Luke stared at her with worry she tried to ignore. He left that afternoon with a hug that lasted longer than usual. After the door closed, Christopher wrapped his arms around her shoulders and whispered, "They do not understand us." That sentence planted a seed. A quiet separation between her world and her family. A line drawn so gently she barely felt it. Sometimes, late at night, she would sit on the edge of the bed and feel something hollow inside her. A tiny voice asking, "Is this really what love looks like?" Christopher would roll over and pull her close before the doubt had time to grow roots. He kissed her temple and said, "I love you. I will never leave you." Loneliness hears those words like a lifeline. Grief hears those words like a second chance. Helen's heart heard those words and opened all the doors inside her. She did not see the locks replacing the ones he removed. She did not see how her choices were slowly shrinking. She did not see that love can hold your hand, while tightening its grip. At least, not yet, because love that redesigns a life can do it so quietly that by the time you notice the floor plan has changed, you are already living in someone else's idea of home. Samantha Carter knew something was wrong the moment she stepped through her mother's front door. The house was spotless, too spotless, and it did not smell like her mother's house anymore. No lavender candles, no fresh laundry scent, just the cold smell of cleaning spray. She found Helen in the living room, wrapped in a soft blanket, smiling politely like a guest instead of the homeowner. And beside her, as always lately, sat Christopher. He greeted Samantha with a smile that felt too perfect, too smooth, like a salesman who already knew the answer to every question you had not asked yet. Samantha sat down carefully. She looked at her mother's hands folded neatly in her lap, hands that used to wave with excitement while telling stories, now resting quiet. "How are you, Mom?" Samantha asked. Before Helen could speak, Christopher answered. "She is doing wonderfully. Less stress, more rest." Samantha forced a smile. "I asked, Mom." Helen lifted her chin a little. "I am fine, sweetheart. Truly." But her voice was tired. Not the tired that needs a nap. the tired that comes from holding something inside. Christopher watched the exchange like a referee instead of a partner, his eyes sharp, almost calculating. Samantha tried to continue the conversation. She mentioned choir rehearsals, the library, the garden. Helen's face flickered with something like sadness for a moment. Oh, I have stepped away from all that. Christopher thinks it is best if I slow down. There it was again. Christopher thinks. Christopher says. Christopher decides. Samantha felt her heart start to pound. Later that day, when Christopher stepped outside to take a phone call, Samantha sat closer to her mother. Mom, do you like all these changes? Or are you just going along with them? Helen looked down. I am tired, Sam. I have taken care of people all my life. It is nice to let someone take care of me for once. Samantha nodded, swallowing the worry rising in her throat. I want you happy. I really do. But happy doesn't mean isolated, Mom. Helen's eyes filled with tears. I know you do not like him, but can't you just trust me to choose what feels right? Samantha squeezed her hand. I trust you. I do not trust the speed of this. Helen pulled her hand back. That small movement hurt more than yelling ever could. When Christopher returned, he slipped his arm around Helen's shoulders and kissed her temple, a gesture that looked loving, but felt like possession. He stared at Samantha with a polite smile that did not reach his eyes. I think you should give your mother some space. She does not need stress right now. Samantha stood. Excuse me. Christopher shrugged lightly. You coming here with questions and negative energy. It is not good for her. She deserves peace. Samantha's jaw tightened. Peace is not shutting out everyone who loves her. Helen stood quickly as though she needed to protect someone, and she chose to protect him. Stop, Sam. Please. He is good to me. Those words sliced clean through the room. Samantha left that day with tears burning behind her eyes. She sat in her car, gripping the steering wheel, wondering how love could be used as a wall instead of a bridge. Luke visited a week later. He asked different questions, calmer ones, but his concern was the same. Christopher spoke first every time. He answered financial questions vaguely. He changed the subject when asked about his past. He dismissed anything that implied Helen needed anyone but him. Luke noticed the new security system, the cameras, the changed locks, the mail Christopher collected before Helen ever saw it. He waited until Christopher went to the kitchen. Mom, are you sure you are seeing everything clearly? It is just a lot, very fast. Helen's chin trembled. Do not do this, Luke. I needed someone. He came when no one else could fill the silence. Her words were meant to reassure. Instead, they felt like blame. Christopher returned with tea just in time to watch Helen wipe away a tear. He placed the mugs down and looked at Luke with a calm danger. She does not need interrogations. Your doubt is hurting her. Luke stood slowly. I am trying to protect her. Christopher's smile sharpened. That is my job now. Helen flinched. Luke stepped back. In the doorway, he paused. Mom, I love you. I am always here, even if you cannot see that right now. Helen did not follow him outside. She sat perfectly still as the door clicked shut. Christopher wrapped his arm around her again, his voice low, confident. They will try to take you away from happiness, but I will never let that happen. Helen nodded. Because the wrong love can speak exactly like the right love. When your heart is scared of losing again. She leaned into him, choosing comfort over questions, desire over doubt, company over caution. She did not see the isolation closing in, one gentle word at a time, because sometimes manipulation does not feel like control. It feels like someone finally holding on and promising never to let go. Helen Carter never thought she would wear white again, not after 4 decades of marriage, not after burying the man who once promised her forever. But one evening, as the sun slipped low over the Charleston harbor, Christopher took her hands in his and said the words she never imagined she would hear a second time. Marry me. Helen laughed out of surprise, then cried out of joy. She felt 30 years younger in that moment. Christopher kissed her cheek. We do not need a big show. Just us. Just love. His voice sounded like a dream she did not want to wake from. Within weeks, he planned everything. A small beachfront ceremony on Hilton Head Island. Just the pastor. Just the photographer. Just them. Helen wondered if she should invite Samantha and Luke. But every time she mentioned it, Christopher's smile would fade ever so slightly. Maybe it is better for now to limit the stress. They do not support us. They might just ruin your happiness. Helen knew her children loved her, yet she also knew they did not see what she saw. The tenderness, the patience, the hope Christopher brought back into her life. So she nodded. Her children were not told. She bought an ivory dress. Simple, elegant, with lace sleeves that made her feel beautiful without trying too hard. On the morning of the wedding, Helen stood before the mirror and touched the lines on her face. She whispered, "You are allowed to be happy again." Michael would want that. At least, that is what she prayed was true. Christopher knocked on the dressing room door and peeked in with a grin. "My God, you are stunning. Like a song I never want to stop hearing." Her cheeks warmed. Compliments like that felt new again. She wanted to believe every word. They exchanged vows barefoot in the sand. The ocean breeze played with her veil. The photographer captured their smiles. Smiles that looked honest. Smiles that looked like love. Smiles that would later be studied in courtrooms. Christopher slipped a gold band on her finger. She slipped one on his. And when the pastor told them they could kiss, he pulled her close and kissed her like he owned every bit of her future. The photos made everything look perfect. A fairy tale. A happily ever after. But fairy tales do not come with contracts or legal documents signed quietly in the days before the ceremony. That week, Christopher had taken Helen to a small office downtown. Just a few papers to make things simpler, he said. She signed a revised will. She increased her life insurance policy to $4.5 million. She named Christopher as her primary beneficiary. When the pen left the paper, their love became worth far more than words. And the man smiling at her knew exactly how much. After the ceremony, they ate dinner at a small restaurant overlooking the water. String lights hung above them. Soft jazz filled the air. Christopher raised his glass. To new beginnings. Helen clinked her glass against his. To love finding its way back. She did not notice the photographer capturing every angle of Christopher's smile. A smile that reached precisely the corners of his mouth, but not the corners of his heart. Later that night, they walked along the beach. Waves touched their feet. Stars shimmered above. It felt like magic. Christopher took her hands again. "You make me feel whole, Helen. Promise me you will always trust me, no matter what anyone says." Helen nodded instantly. Of course, because when someone gives you back the pieces of yourself you thought were gone, you cling to them, even if your fingers start to bleed. Back in Charleston, Samantha stared at her phone, waiting for a call that never came. Luke paced his apartment, feeling a storm without seeing clouds. They did not know where their mother was, or what vows she had spoken, or how far she had stepped into a life she believed was safety, but was really a trap painted in romance. That night, as Helen drifted to sleep beside her new husband, she whispered a thank you into the darkness. "Thank you for giving me a second chance." Christopher curled around her. He smiled with his eyes open, because he knew something she did not. Their marriage was never about love. It was about the countdown. Helen Carter had always loved the ocean. Michael used to tease her that the waves were her first love, long before he came along. The sound of water always calmed her, made her feel grounded, safe. So when Christopher surprised her with a private sailing trip along the Florida Panhandle for their honeymoon, she felt a flicker of the old excitement. Seagulls crying overhead, sun melting into the water, the world smelling like salt and freedom. The yacht was small but elegant, a white deck that shimmered under the sun, a cozy cabin with soft linens and a window that framed the sea like art. It looked like happiness. Captain Ellis, a retired Navy man in his early 70s, welcomed them aboard. He had a weathered face and eyes that had seen both storms and miracles. He smiled at Helen, a kind smile, the kind that says, "I am here if you need anything." But when his gaze shifted to Christopher, his smile thinned. Just a little. Not enough for anyone to notice. Except maybe the ocean. The first day passed like a postcard. Christopher took pictures of Helen leaning on the railing, wind in her hair. He posted one online with the caption, "She is my peace." She blushed when he showed her. But something in his eyes looked like he was studying the angle, not the moment. That evening, as the sun dropped into the horizon, Christopher poured champagne and held Helen close. He whispered, "You make me feel alive." She felt dizzy from all the affection, from the champagne, from believing a heart can bloom twice in a lifetime. But the next morning, little things started to feel off. Christopher stood behind her at the railing longer than necessary, his hands resting almost too tightly on her shoulders. Helen tried to ignore the chill that crawled up her spine. He asked the captain how deep the water was. Twice, then again later. Between smiles, his eyes looked like they were measuring something. The tide, the distance, the opportunity. At lunch, Helen mentioned wanting to call Samantha. Christopher's jaw tightened. Why ruin the moment? They will only stress you out. Helen flushed, embarrassed. He was right, she told herself. This was their time. Still, the uneasy feeling lingered. Captain Ellis noticed the tension. During a moment alone on deck, he asked quietly, "Everything all right, ma'am?" Helen smiled quickly, too quickly. Of course, just adjusting to all this change. The captain nodded, but his eyes stayed watchful. That afternoon, Christopher suggested an evening swim. Just the two of them, under the stars. Helen hesitated. She was not a strong swimmer, and the ocean looked endless. Dark. Christopher laughed softly. "Do you not trust me?" He said it like a joke, but his eyes dared her to say no. So she agreed. Because love, when new, feels like something you should prove. As sunset poured gold across the deck, Helen changed into a simple, white cover-up. Christopher set up his phone near the railing. "Filming memories," he said. His hands were steady. Too steady. Captain Ellis watched from a distance, arms crossed. "Ma'am, the current can get tricky this time of night. Maybe wait until morning." His voice held a warning Helen almost heard. Christopher stepped closer. "We will stay close, Captain." His tone polite, but final. Helen approached the railing. The wind brushed against her skin. She wrapped her arms around herself. Christopher placed his hand on her back. A loving touch. A guiding touch. The deck creaked. The water below churned softly. Helen looked into his face, searching for the warmth she always found there. Instead, she saw focus. Cold. Sharp. Her heart stumbled. He leaned close. His whisper felt like a door closing. "Trust me." Then, a sudden force. A slip that was not a slip. The world flipped. Salt water rushed into her mouth, into her lungs. She kicked, panicked, reached up. For help. For him. Christopher did not reach back. He stood there, watching, as her scream was swallowed by waves. Captain Ellis ran forward yelling, but it was too late. Her white cover-up disappeared beneath the surface. Christopher shouted her name, but his voice arrived late, like he was reading from a script. Helen's last thought before the dark water dragged her under was simple and shattering. "I trusted you." The ocean closed over her. Calm again, quiet again. Somewhere above, the man she married smoothed his hair and prepared to become the grieving husband. Because the honeymoon was not meant to celebrate love, it was designed to end it. ChatGPT don't know. The ocean was quiet again, almost peaceful, as if nothing terrible had just happened in its dark arms. Christopher Hale stood at the railing with the perfect amount of panic in his voice. Just enough to sound believable, but not enough to look messy. He dialed the Coast Guard. "My wife. She slipped. I cannot see her. Please hurry." His breath broke in all the right places. Captain Ellis knew something was wrong. He had seen real panic before. Real panic does not pause, does not straighten a shirt, does not check the angle of a security camera. He wanted to dive in anyway, but the water was too deep, too dark, and he was too old to reach her in time. And Helen, sweet Helen, was already sinking faster than fear could keep her afloat. Within 20 minutes the rescue boats arrived. Blinding white searchlights cut through the waves. Helicopter blades chopped the air, beating like a frantic heart. Christopher repeated his story, word for word, like lines he had practiced. She wanted to see the stars. She leaned too far. "I tried to grab her," he said, but his clothes were bone dry. The officers took notes, questioned, scanned for inconsistencies. Christopher never slipped, never stuttered, never said anything he did not mean to say. He sat wrapped in a blanket, shoulders hunched, eyes wet, but not red. A photographer from a local news boat snapped a few photos. The perfect picture of heartbreak. A new husband watching the sea swallow his fresh start. The Coast Guard searched until dawn. When the sun rose, the water looked calmer, as if trying to comfort the ones left waiting. They found nothing but silence. News spread fast. Tragic honeymoon accident. Charleston widow dies at sea. Husband devastated. Social media turned Christopher into a symbol of love lost too soon. Prayers poured in. Donations too. People love a heartbreak almost as much as they love a villain, once they know the truth. But the truth had not surfaced yet. Miles away, at a marine research station near Pensacola, a team returned from a routine dive. They carried with them a waterproof camera, strapped to a sea turtle, as part of a long-term tracking study. They loaded the footage onto a computer, expecting coral reefs and curious fish, and the slow ballet of underwater life. For the first few minutes, that was all it was. Then, A shadow moved overhead. A large shadow. Human. The turtle looked up. The camera followed. A woman's figure dropped into the water, arms flailing, legs kicking, white fabric wrapping around her like a ghost trying to help. 2 seconds later, another figure appeared at the railing, above her, still, silent. He did not jump. He did not reach. He simply watched. The team fell into shocked silence. They rewound the clip, played it again, slowed it down, frame by frame. The truth became undeniable. This was no accident. They froze the screen on the man's posture. Shoulders squared, chin lowered, expression calm, like someone watching the final move in a plan years in the making. The timestamp matched the emergency call perfectly. Nature had become a witness. The researchers contacted authorities. They sent the clip to the Coast Guard. The Coast Guard sent it to detectives. The detectives watched, and none of them spoke, until one finally whispered. He was waiting. Back on land, Christopher continued his performance. He held a small memorial service. He cried for cameras. He thanked people for their support. He said Helen made him believe in love again. And now life felt empty. Samantha and Luke did not attend. They were not invited. Instead, they sat in Samantha's living room, holding each other's hands, fearing what they did not yet know, but felt deep in their bones. Then, Detective Ramirez knocked on their door. "I think you need to see something." In a quiet room at the police station, the siblings watched the footage. Samantha covered her mouth. A sound broke out of her that did not sound human. Luke just stared, jaw clenched, a tear sliding down without his permission. Their mother's last moments. Exposed. Saved. By a creature that never meant to help, but did, because truth has a way of surfacing, even in the deepest water. That night, the current spoke, louder than any man ever could, and it told the world exactly who Christopher Hale truly was. Detective Ramirez had seen enough broken hearts to know when something did not add up. Accidents are messy. Emotions spill everywhere. Stories shift and crack in the light. But Christopher Hale's story stayed too perfect, too controlled, too practiced. The video footage was the first hard punch of truth. The second came from a place no one expected. A missing puzzle piece buried in a filing cabinet 3 states away. While investigators processed the footage, Ramirez and his partner, Detective Cole, began digging into Christopher's past. A search that started in South Carolina soon stretched into Texas, then Virginia. Everywhere they turned, they found a different version of the same man. Different names, different smiles, same lies. In Dallas, he was Christopher Hill. He dated a 62-year-old widow named Margaret Pierce. She lost her husband to cancer. She opened her heart and her bank accounts to the charming stranger who made her feel chosen again. 6 months later, she drowned in her backyard pool. Ruled an accident. Her will had been updated just weeks before her death. Then there was Richmond, Virginia. Same story, different ending, but the same outcome. There he was known as Christian Hale. He met a woman named Barbara Whitman at a grief support group. She had money. She had loneliness. He had answers. Barbara fell down the stairs late one night. Broken neck. Gone before help arrived. Ruled an accident. Her estate swept neatly into his hands. Before he disappeared without a goodbye, the detectives found more. Unexplained deaths, insurance payouts, addresses that led nowhere, jobs that could not be verified. Each story was like a ghost, whispering the same warning. He had done this before. He would have done it again. Ramirez stared at the timeline pinned to the board in the station. 3 women, 3 new beginnings, 3 sudden endings. All beautiful, kind, generous, and alone when night fell. Helen Carter fit the pattern perfectly. A heart big enough to trust. A life valuable enough to steal. Back at her house, Samantha opened a drawer her mother rarely used. Inside, she found a stack of envelopes, bills, letters, all addressed to Christopher. She did not know those bills were paid with her mother's savings. Because her mother never saw them. She did not know the locks were changed. Because Christopher controlled the keys. She did not know her mother cried some nights. Because she believed doubts were disloyal. Samantha pressed the stack to her chest, whispering, "Mom, I am so sorry. I should have pushed harder. I should have seen." Luke slammed a hand against the wall in frustration. He had spent weeks trying to warn her. Every conversation ended with the same quiet plea. "Why can you not be happy for me, Luke?" Detectives worked day and night. They documented every transfer, every signature, every lie. The prosecutor reviewed the evidence and realized the case was no longer about a tragic accident. It was about a serial manipulator, a predator, a man who hunted grief the way others hunted opportunity. They needed a motive, but Christopher had already given them that. For $0.5 million, the kind of motive that never runs out. The arrest warrant was issued quietly, to avoid tipping him off. Meanwhile, Christopher continued answering messages of sympathy from strangers. He posted about soulmates and angels and love taken too soon. People shared his posts, crying over his pain, never realizing they were comforting a killer. He believed he was safe, untouchable, smarter than the law, and smarter than the ocean. He did not know the tide had already turned against him. His lies had been swept out to sea, and the truth had washed ashore. Frame by frame, timestamp by timestamp, Detective Ramirez stood outside the station one evening, watching the sun lower into the horizon. He thought about Helen, a woman who gave kindness like oxygen, who believed love came with honesty. He whispered into the wind, "We will bring you justice. I promise you that, Helen," because this story was never just about one widow, or one accident, or one bad man. It was about a pattern, hidden inside lonely hearts, waiting for someone ready to take advantage. And that pattern was finally broken. The courthouse in Charleston stood tall against the morning sky, the same sky Helen once admired from her back porch. Today, it held something else. Justice. Christopher Hale walked into the courtroom wearing a crisp suit and that familiar, careful smile. He nodded politely to the officers guiding him, as if he were a guest, as if this were all one big misunderstanding. But across the room sat Samantha and Luke, hands clasped tightly, faces pale. He did not look at them. He never had the courage to face what he had stolen. The prosecutor did not raise her voice. She did not need theatrics. She had truth. She played the ocean footage, frame by frame. The room watched the moment Helen fell, and the man who vowed to love her stepped back instead of forward. Gasps filled the air. A juror covered her mouth. One looked away because some betrayals are too painful to witness directly. Next came the evidence of his pattern. The other widows, the forged signatures, the updated wills, the money trails that led straight to his bank accounts. Piece by piece, Christopher's charm dissolved, until all that remained was calculation. His lawyer tried, blamed the ocean, blamed panic, blamed anything but the hands that pushed Helen into the dark. But the jury saw the truth clearly. When the verdict was read, guilty of murder in the first degree, Christopher did not flinch. He simply tightened his jaw, as if anger was his last defense. The judge delivered the sentence. Life in prison, no chance of parole. The sound of that decision settled into the room like sunrise breaking through clouds. Justice had arrived. Eventually, inevitably, like morning light. Samantha cried silently, not tears of victory, tears of relief, tears of love that would never fade. Luke placed an arm around her. They leaned into each other, just like they once leaned into their mother's arms when they were small. After the courtroom emptied, they walked outside into the warm air. They could almost hear Helen's laughter in the wind. Gentle, kind, proud. Months later, a ceremony was held in her honor. The Helen Carter Music Scholarship, awarded to students who remind the world that kindness still matters. Samantha spoke at the event, her voice steady, her heart steadying too. She said, "My mother believed that giving joy was the purpose of life. She never asked for anything in return. This is how she will keep teaching. This is how she will keep loving." Everyone applauded. The ocean breeze carried the sound as if delivering it directly to Helen. Back home, the blue house remained filled with memories. The porch still caught the morning light. And in the quiet, there was peace again, not loneliness. Samantha hung a photo of her mother on the living room wall. Helen laughing, head tilted back, eyes shining with hope. Luke placed a small vase of lilies beneath it, Helen's favorite. Every year on Helen's birthday, they take a short drive to the pier. They stand where she once stood and toss sunflowers into the water. They watch the petals drift out to sea, carried by the same current that once told the world her truth. As the waves roll in, they whisper the same promise. We remember. We will always remember. Because love does not end. It keeps traveling, like a tide that never stops returning to shore. And justice, real justice, may take time, may feel delayed, but it always comes, right on time, like morning light.